Hello, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, platform, whatever, who may be out there watching. Good now to you. Welcome to Riffing with Ryan. This is the channel that I am so glad to have here. Now, today on the Conversation Jam was a topic in the theme of no such thing as an agile coach, which we've been doing for the past couple weeks. The originator of that hashtag, Marcelo Lopez, has not been here since the first episode, but we hope he will be back. But today, we have three amazing, wonderful, fantastic participants and contributors to this discussion of no such thing as an agile coach. Sub-theme for today: what is an agile coach anyway? Who cares? Why do you care? So what are these things of the universe? So without further ado, I will introduce our first participant at the top of my screen, Madam Erika Lenz. Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Would you regale me with the who are you, why do you care about this topic, and what do you want to have happen today? How about that?
All right. I have not prepared. Who am I? That one I can do pretty easily. I'm Erika Lenz. I have been an Agilist of some form for, 12, 13 years, something like that, and worked in a whole bunch of different domains and contexts with a whole bunch of different kinds of messy humans. Why do I care about this topic? It's kind of a deeply personal reason, because as I was coming up as an Agile coach, I literally spent a year walking around asking out loud, what is my job exactly? What am I supposed to be doing? Made my boss nuts. She was good to me, though. So I think there's a lot of confusion about the role, and I think experienced coaches walk around in the world thinking that we know what it is, but I'm not sure anybody else does. So if I could have anything out of today, and I probably won't get to validate this, but I would like to provide 10 people a little more clarity about what the role is. How's that for a measurable metric?
Well, you have 6 here in this room, so you're 60% there, I think. But maybe 10 of the folks out there in the meta blabberverse who are, I would hope they get some value from this. So thank you, Erika. I'm going to put you back in the green room and bring out our next participant. See you, Erika. And from the UK, we have Mr. Ryan Behrman. Would you regale everyone out there with the who are you, why do you give two figs about this topic, and what do you want to have happen today?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Ryan, the other Ryan, and I suppose I've gone by the title Agile Coach for many years, and I also help in some way to develop the field of Agile coaching by coaching and training and supervising other Agile coaches. So a lot of my time is spent in that realm of training, running community workshops, community building in that space, and curious about the evolving field of both Agile and Agile coaching, and curious to learn from the others here and just have a dialogue about where things are and what could be, and yeah, that sort of thing. So delighted to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ryan. Our next contestant on the show today is, this is Mr. Kyle Griffin, Aretae, a friend and interlocutor. Kyle, would you regale us with who are you, why are you here, and why should I care about this topic? How about
that? You Ryan, or you generically?
How about me? Talk to me about this.
So it's been interesting. I taught my first class on something that would be currently called Agile in the year 2000. I was teaching software methodology, and part of my methodology course was on RUP, but I wanted to point out that RUP was a slow, stick in the mud kind of
Piece of crap.
barely edge of modern methodology. Certainly, it was an improvement over entirely sequential, do all of the requirements first, but the barely edge of the modern movement towards building better process was, right, you should have 5% of your code written by the time you have like 60% of your requirements gathered. And that was the RUP part that nobody really said out loud most of the time, because they wanted to use RUP as a more sequential phase gated thing. And of course, I got to know something about the nice people who had built and sold RUP, and got some idea of the character and how interested they were in quality versus selling at that point. And then, but at the same time, I was in the technical coaching space. In 2000, Agile coaching was 90%. Let's help you write code better by helping you write code better. And that's where I started, and that's kind of where I still am. And so I like to bring the other side of the picture of Agile coaching. A lot of folks tend to think of Agile coaching as this processy thing or something else, whereas I have a hard time going, yeah, but what about the writing code? What opinions do we have about how you put your fingers on the keyboard?
All right, I will take that. I will chew on that for a moment. Kyle, thank you so much. And our fourth contestant today is a rather surprising addition because you weren't here for the green room. Chris, welcome. Who are you? What do you think about this topic? And what do you want to have happen today?
Yeah, my name is Chris Vestal. I'm part of this conversation. It's been an interesting conversation over the past few weeks on LinkedIn. I'm just hoping to continue the conversation today. That's really my expectation, is just to keep the conversation going. I think it's an important one to have in the industry today. You know, where did Agile coaching start? What's the trajectory of it? You know, how do we improve on it and work together towards that end? That's why I'm here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Chris. And we have our 5th contestant and participant today. This would be Jess Brock. Hello, Jess.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
You are welcome, and I so look forward to. I look forward to everybody's participation, but I'm happy to have you here. Who are you? What is an Agile coach anyway, as far as you're concerned? And where's your curiosity at the moment?
Sure, I'm Jess Brock. I feel an Agile coach is a person who specializes in coaching agility. And I have numerous curiosities, mainly around the need of Agile coaching and considering the current state of technology and Agile at large.
All right. Well, let's all sit with that for a moment. Thank you, Jess. I'm going to put you back in the green room. And for a moment, bring everyone back here. So we'll see what the panel looks like in toto. And so I invite each of you, as you're here, to take in what you've heard from the other participants. As the theme resonates within you, I'll put myself on full screen, give a few rules of the game, and then we'll open the marketplace and let you all start singing beautiful music together. So the rules of this game are a game I call open space technology. Many people call that open space technology. I would think everybody does. This is a forum where whatever happens is the only thing that could have happened. And it is a binding of passion and responsibility. So if you care about something and you want to take a passionate stand and care about stand up for what you love, open space is the place to do it. Whoever comes to the session today are the right people. And I have some beautiful people here. I hear some rumbling in the background, but that's part of the whatever happens is the only thing that could have happened. Wherever it happens is the right place, whether it happens in the session prior to in the theme crafting, whether it happens here or after, wherever it happens is the right place with you in the comments as you're participating in this open space. When it starts is the right time. Here we are, 11 minutes after. When it's over, it's over. We're kind of releasing the binding time with that. And with that, the theme has been set. The marketplace, such as it is open. Comments in YouTube, LinkedIn, and wherever you might have them are here, and the space is open.
Don't everybody go at once. So there were a few questions that came up last week, and I don't know if we want to start there or if we want to open a brand new greenfield with this.
I'm happy to start somewhere. Having a start point helps me a lot.
So I think where we left off was essentially we'd gone through, right, kind of a chronological order, if I recall correctly, and we were talking about kind of the state of where Agile coaching is, how we got there, a few of the players that were influential in moving from more of a tech-centric to more of a coaching-centric or professional coaching-centric feel, if you will, to Agile coaching. And I think that the progression of that was very interesting to me personally because I like history. That may not be the most interesting topic for some, but I think it might be helpful to kind of start at the beginning and go through that and see what comes of that. There was a book that was released called Agile Coaching by the same name, right? And it was about Agile coaching, written by Agile coaches, but their history, and if you look at their LinkedIn profile, you'll see that they weren't professional coaches at all. They were true Agilists in the sense of they came from development community, and they were just looking to uncover better ways to improve all of the processes, all of the approaches, all of the practices, the mentalities, the mindset, all of it. So that seemed to be their intention. When I read their book, it's very tech-centric. It has nothing to do with, holding space or has very little to do with that sort of thing. It has very little to do with coaching arcs. It has very little to do with the things that we typically associate with coaching. So I just wonder, where is the value center now? And that led off to the last time to a few conversations where it was more around how we should brand ourselves and this personal branding versus how the industry sees us versus how, who we want to be or what we want to name ourselves or prefer to name ourselves. So that's kind of a recap of my recollection. There's a lot more that happened last week, but that was the highlights to me that were very interesting, and talking about how we're perceived. Do we need to change how we're perceived? How do we come to be perceived in this way? And is that a good or bad thing, or is it just is what it is? I don't know.
It's interesting to me that I missed the conversation last time, so I don't think I can respond to it effectively, but it's interesting to me listening to you that the focus is on perception. And used that word several times. And, you know, I have been in numerous situations where I had to explain what the heck I did. And because the client had hired something different than I am. They hired for someone to, you know, speed up their delivery and be there and be the the school marm or the enforcer of some set of practices. And you know, it took some work to get people to understand that I was there to help people grow instead. And so I learned pretty early to come in and have that coaching conversation. There's a 9-quadrant tool, a 9-box, and I am drawing a blank on it. It's incorrectly attributed to Jerry Weinberg. But Esther Derby corrected me and said, no, it was this consultancy that did it. And so I found that tool very useful. How much do you want me to be responsible for your growth as an organization versus how much do you want me to do the work? And those are two separate axes. And so I think the perception, yes, people misperceive the role because the role is frankly weird. When we're looking at how businesses operate. And getting clear on what the client wants and what the goal is kind of clears up that perception issue. And so it still makes branding hard, but I think branding is kind of secondary, at least in my mind.
You're really close to my favorite topic, Erika.
Oh, yeah, I did it on purpose, Kyle.
Okay, cool. So one of the things that I've been focusing on recently is, hey, what was Agile built to do? Well, Agile in 2001 was an outgrowth of the OO community that runs back to 1980, right? It's all one continuous thing, and it's a lot of the same people from the 1980 OO community were signatories on the Agile Manifesto. And so watching that thought, Agile is how do you build, Agile was once, how do you build software so that you can adapt easily to the customer needs as they change? We know the customer needs are going to change. We know we're going to have to build the software so it can change. And so Agile was, you've been making a mistake in how you build software. You're solving the wrong problem. The right problem is, how do you build adaptable software that can roll towards the people? And we can't do that by just editing the software. We did that in the 80s. And it turns out that if you build the software with object-oriented methodologies, then maybe your software can be easy to change, but that's still not good enough. You have to fix organizational parts to be so that the software is easy to change. My current conclusion is that the last 20 years of Agile coaching that I've done, people aren't interested in building software that's easy to change. And so the Agile coaches who are trying to say, let's build software that's good, and good obviously means easy to change, are not lining up with the managers who are saying, I want my bonus, which is paid by delivering the fixed requirements on time. And so I'm running into problems with what I think is the obvious way to build software that solves customer problems is not the obvious way to build software that solves manager problems.
So it's around expectations, and maybe I should have used that word instead of perception, but to me, it's tied together. People have a perception because their expectations may or may not being met. So we have to manage those expectations, right? To your point, Eric. So that's where I think that we've kind of jumped the shark, right? Like, where is our value center? Is it in being professional coaches? There's great depth there. There's great there's a lot of value there, but it's taking up a lot of space at the same time. And so I wonder if our value is more centered now. If we went backwards, if you will, kind of do a redux and look at where we started, and is our value still there versus where we're at right now, as far as the point of focus and effort.
I think you bring up something, Chris, that's been top of mind for me, and that is the value of Agile coaches. I mean, you look at the job market, in the last 2 years, we've, 250,000 jobs, now more, have been slashed, namely a big part of the Agile presence at Target, Capital One, Spotify. I mean, we could go down the list. So there's this overarching, either for some reason it's not worth the investment as much anymore to larger companies, which certainly influence the smaller companies. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I think that a lot of people in technology have been affected. It's not, singularly Agilist, although there were a few occasions of that, Capital One being the most prominent, right? But I still have hope that this is a lull. This is a natural cycle. There was a growth spurt where there was an imbalance created around growth. That was where the focus was, and not so much profit. And so that has to eventually balance itself out, and we're suffering through that right now. That's how I see the macro view of this. It's not anything that Agilists ever did or didn't do. That's kind of outside of our control to a large extent. What has been more surprising to me is kind of this resurgence of what I would consider, or what has been called, classical project management, where if you're looking at job ads, you're seeing a lot of required PMPs now, and I haven't seen that in years, right? Like that's a big difference for me personally when I'm looking through job ads or job descriptions. But those typically aren't. That's typically more in the Scrum Master space, not so much the Agile Coach space, I would say. The Agile Coach space, I think, is maybe taken up by more program manager type of roles. Again, where's our value? Is it in managing a process, or is it in growing people? Is it in being more technically centric? I think there's different branches of that. I see Kyle smiling.
Well, I want to double down on Jess's question. I may not have understood it correctly, but I have I spent 10 or 15 years, 20 years reading Economics Daily before I found Agile, right? And so my question, I think this is the direction of Jess's question, but let's be harsher about it. You got $1 million. It costs $100,000 for each person on the team, plus or minus some amount, right? Are you going to buy another developer? You're going to buy an Agile coach.
I think it goes even deeper than I really do. I think it gets to the bottom line ROI. I hear what you're saying. And also, hey, you have a budget. What are you going to do with it? And, get the most for your money, right? Everyone wants that. I do think this gets into the Agile industrial complex. This gets into coaches who are coaching who shouldn't be coaching. The value of Agile coaches, and might I say the value of Agile in general, has been highly overinflated in my experience. I have yet to see an Agile transformation in a big scale, like a large enterprise, really stick. And that's when you see that regression back to project management, because I think we're starting to look at, hey, these folks are $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 roles. They're supposed to make us so much more competitive. And hey, you know what? We're not the Google. We're not the Apple, Netflix, and etc. I think we're just not seeing the return on the investment default back to, project management, which very much is still Agile. You see PMI, and it is peppered with Agile now. I mean, I'm not saying Agile, don't use it, don't even get me started on that. I'm a convert. I was a huge skeptic years ago, but now I'm certainly, a convert. But I just think it's the overhypedness has been revealed, and we're moving on, and this is a new norm.
I think Agile transformation itself has been too narrow. We're talking here about technology versus management versus process. The challenge I see is that they're all needed to be at least touched on, if not integrated with each other. So a lot of Agile is actually a very integrated approach, which is why we're struggling so much to come out and define what an Agile coach is, because we all have our different strengths in different areas, whether it be product management or change or technical process. But I think therein lies the beauty. If to come back to, I think it was Carl's point, if I had $1 million and or pounds, I had 9 developers already, I would hire an Agile coach, a good one, and that's another matter we need to talk about perhaps, because it's about getting the most out of those 9 people and more and wider. So personally, I would go for at least that ratio, because it will get more value than bringing in a 10th developer in most cases, in my view.
So this is
sorry.
This is kind of a focus more on output, right? That's kind of what you're suggesting, versus understanding outcome and value, being value driven. They think that throwing more people at it may help overall. And I agree with you, Ryan. Like, the balance is kind of the key here. We're force multipliers. That's how I see us as well.
But not all of us are force multipliers, right? And so I want to build on something Ryan was saying about, there are all these different things we specialize on. We have overloaded the term Agile coach to such an extreme amount that we have to qualify what we mean by it. Well, I'm an Agile coach that focuses on change. I'm an Agile coach that's able to look at the entire system of your organization. I'm an Agile coach that focuses on teams and helping teams perform better. I think we can't all do it all. And we need for us not all to be aiming at that systemic view all the time. It's one of the patterns that I see is once a coach is in the field for a while, they want to talk about the really cool, big, heady stuff. And they move away from working with teams, often directly. And so I think there's a major coolness factor to that. There's a status thing around that I wish we would talk more openly about when we're talking about what makes a good coach, and how do you train someone for those higher status roles where you're doing the cooler, headier stuff. I mean, I didn't have anyone train me on how to see systems. I had to train myself. Am I good at it? I don't know. I think maybe I have some skill there, but there's no way that of validating my skill in that area. And I think we've been very hand wavy about what good looks like.
Well, I think I agree with you, Erika. And if it's seen that, say, an enterprise or organizational coach, whatever you want to call it, is higher level in terms of status or salary or whatever, then I totally agree with you. I also think that people just have their skills at different levels. Like, some people are great at facilitating large group facilitation, so helping to align, synchronize, and coordinate multiple people, both in live and also in the background of what's required for that to happen. And others are just built for working with a team, perhaps, or two. And I think we need both. And sometimes some people can switch quite seamlessly between the two and manage both at the same time. But I do think that there's skills that we need without necessarily having to say, well, this is a higher status role than that, because I don't believe it is.
I worry about even topics like, I think the last transformation I went into, I saw a bunch of good stuff. And where were the difficulties? The biggest difficulty we ran into was in accounting. Accounting had a vision of what they needed. We had a completely different vision of what we needed. And it turns out that doing Agile that's built on let's adapt to the needs of the user better, which is not what everybody is doing. I've seen that at 20% of the places I walk into that say we're doing Agile. 20% of them are focused on needs of the user. The other 80% are calling something else Agile. And then, even if you're trying to do needs of the user, it's usually driven by somebody in IT, whereas I need HR and accounting who don't report to the CIO to be aligned. And so when I'm looking at systemic Agile transformation, a organization, it's an enormous organizational shift to say, I don't care about finishing the project on time. I care about delivering value to the user. How many places in the organization does that have to hit? We couldn't do that without changing our accounting model at the last place I was. And that's a big deal. And it has nothing to do with what 95% of the Agile coaches I've met do. Right? How do you deal with the Sarbanes-Oxley requirements when you're in an Agile world and the internal decisions that have previously been made on SOX come down to we need pre-decisions on what we're doing 9 months before you do it, right? Those are real questions that come up that aren't IT questions as to how do you even allow somebody to focus on value delivery over project completion?
Yeah, I would on that one. I don't know. I don't know enough, honestly. Sometimes I think we slap Agile on everything as a default. Not everything has to be Agile. Some things have a clear start and end. That's a project, you know. It's interesting you said 20. I want to make sure I heard this right. You said 20% of the time you actually see Agile, in your opinion, the correct, focused on the customer, and it's implemented in the way it should be intended, right? Interpreted in the way it should be intended. Just done right. How about that? Agile done right 20% of the time.
I think that's so far fair, and yeah. And I will admit, some of those have been at startups, right? That's not right. That's 20% of Kyle's personal experiences.
But see, I want to get into that, and I would love to hear the rest of the group's thoughts on this and their experiences. 20% where, okay, whether it's startup, enterprise, etc., that's where you've been like, hey, they get it. Same. It's been rare for me to be in an environment, and it is typically a smaller entity that seems to get it and seems to, can do the quick learning cycles. You can see the mindset shift, the willingness, everything is beautiful and gravy. And I want to hear from the group, like, what is your percentages? Let's start there.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding the question. You mean throughout my career, what's the percentage, or in any given place, what's the proportion?
Just throughout your career, you see Agile done right. What percentage of the time?
I've been really lucky because I have worked with XP teams and XP teams that were doing it for 18 years. And so I was not, in terms of counting humans, that was not 20% of my career, but it has had an outsized influence on what I think healthy, generative, fun, productive, like muscular Agile looks like. And I have seen in smaller organizations, I've seen some really beautiful interconnected teams that were coordinating well and delivering at least every 2 weeks, if not more frequently. So it takes up 70% of my my thoughts, but it's probably more like 10 or 15% of bodies I've encountered. And part of my journey has been moving from smaller organizations to really large ones, like Fortune 10 size. And I have to say, I'm switching back down to smaller size because I think I have yet to see it in these large organizations. They are so far off from what it feels like when you have a healthy, self-organizing team that has everything they need to lean in and deliver quickly. They're so profoundly far away from it that I don't want to play that game anymore. Now, I have not been at the Googles of the world, so maybe I've missed something.
So I want to make sure I heard you right, Erika. Were you saying about 15% of the time? You're like, yeah, that's a good example of that.
Yeah, but if we're talking organizations, development organizations under 700 people, I would say what I've seen is closer to 80% of the time.
Okay, good. What about others? I'd be curious to hear your experience.
So I'll go. I don't like thinking in terms of, I don't think this way, I guess. Let me start out by saying that. First of all, we have all different definitions of what is Agile, and that's our own personal perception, and that is a perception, not even a perspective. Or maybe it could be a perspective. We've spent a lot of time analyzing that in each situation or each case. But to me, Agile is contextualized balance. And so what I mean by that is, what is that person, what is that team, what is that organization, what does that area need in order to move more rapidly and maintain stability while introducing flexibility and increasingly improve over time. That to me is Agile. So by that definition, I've seen a lot of growth. I can say that by defining success that way, there's a lot of growth. And I think that's the best way to define success. So I personally would define it differently. Everybody can have their own definition. But if you're following the Agile Manifesto, if you look at the 4 core values, those are polarities. It says that while we value what's on the right, we value what's on the left more. So that's how I think now when I go into Agile. When I go into a place that wants to introduce Agile, that's how my brain thinks. So if we define it like that, and our whole purpose is to balance the tensions and help the other people balance the tensions, and recognize and be aware of those tensions, and understand that these aren't problems to solve. These are things that have to be managed very closely. That changes the entire framing, right? So I can claim a lot higher success in that view, even in the large organizations. That's where I feel like we can show more success if we define it that way, because again, it's about growth. It's about where their baseline is, not what my personal understanding of Agile is, although I feel like I have a good understanding of Agile. So I'm not going to impose or overlay, project my own view of how Agile someone is ever, or try not to. I don't do it to others. I don't do it to my team, and I don't feel comfortable doing it to organizations. Agile is as Agile does. So I'll leave it at that.
Can I poke at that a little bit?
Sure.
When I read Agile, I'm very simple. Too much time in philosophy in my wasted youth. I read the first line of Agile, and it says, hey, look, we are more focused on responding to change, second line, than on following the plan.
Right.
Right? It's not that we're not into planning. Planning's fine, but we are appreciative of responding to change. And so I walk into an organization and I see somebody, and how big of scare quotes can I do?
Right.
Big scare quotes. And we're doing Scrum. And that means we have a stand-up and we have a sprint planning. And in every sprint planning, we figure out which things from our 12 months ago plan we are doing first. And in our stand-up, we give a status report. And so we are doing the things that it says to do in Scrum. But are we focused on responding to change? None. Are we focused on customer collaboration instead of contract negotiation? Are you kidding me? I mean, what is this nonsense?
So
right? And so there's nothing from the manifesto in the discussion, nothing. But everybody's doing a stand-up and everybody's having a sprint review where we show PowerPoints about what we almost got done. And what do you call that?
Right. So Agile has been hijacked slightly, almost from the beginning. So I know this is going to sound like I'm deviating. So feel free to bring me back anytime, Kyle. Okay. There's a misconception that Agile lets you go faster. That's not what Agile is about. Do you agree? Like, just at face, do you agree with that? Like, Agile can actually take longer. I mean, let's not kid ourselves.
I'm an XP guy. You give me 3 months, I will be going faster.
Well, perhaps, yeah, perhaps. I won't dispute that. I know a lot of great XPers, and I would tend to believe what you're saying. The point is, though, we had a lot of influences. So it was a confluence of ideas, a confluence of in the spirit, in the zeitgeist, if you will. And one of the first things that hit was the notion from Lean Startup. They were invited to some of the first Agile conferences, if you go back and look at it. And this is how these notions were infiltrated. If you look at the Agile Manifesto, it says early and often. It's very precise, intentional, explicit. But now we're focused on speed. Find the word speed in the manifesto. Find the word fast in the manifesto. Find the word quick in the manifesto. I dare anyone.
Yeah, it's not speed. It's speed to value, right? We need to reduce that feedback loop. Yeah, absolutely. Right. So the reason why I asked my question earlier, I was curious to hear your experiences on, hey, this is like a clear-cut, business case for Agile. This kicked. But, I went to this company, we helped and we did these great things, and we demonstrated the value of Agile and then the value of Agile coaches.
Yeah.
I believe from my experience, from other people's experience that are experts in the field, whether they're technology or they're Agilists themselves, the business case has just crumbled. Like, in order to find a business case to fund an Agile coach or to fund, this big Agile lift, this is completely my opinion and my prediction, but I think those days are behind us. I think we're plateauing a bit. I would love to hear your opinion.
It depends on how we define it, though. It really is about perceptions and managing those perceptions. So I'm glad that came out in the first, because that's really kind of where my mind goes immediately, where my heart goes immediately, is we don't intend to let anyone down. Nobody sets out to let anyone down. But there's certain expectations that, let's be real about it, certain expectations really aren't fair to Agile or aren't fair to anyone. Like the notion that Agile exists to solve problems. Agile exists to bring transparency, yes, but it solves no problems in the end.
Well, so let me push on this a little bit. Yeah. My view continues to be slightly different. If I am allowed to, if a lot of people I know, like I know Erika best of the people on this call, if you let Erika go into an organization and solve what I would call the Agile problem, it produces better outcomes for the organization. But that produces better outcomes, not necessarily better outputs. It doesn't necessarily benefit the manager who would want Erika to come in. At my last organization, I flat out had a leader tell me, so here's the deal. You are saying, here is what would be good for my customers. You're right. That would be good for my customers. If I do what you're telling me, they're going to cut my bonus because I'm not delivering the fixed requirements on the fixed date. So you're correct about what's good for the business.
Right.
And you are exactly wrong about what's good for the leaders in the business.
So Kyle, how do we make that?
Which one am I going to do?
Well, no, but as Agilists, do we bear some fiduciary responsibility to make that transparent? And I'm not saying go run and tell. I'm just saying, is there a way that Agilists should be able to bring more transparency to the internal dynamics, that space between, right?
Well,
Depends on who your client is, right?
The person who brings in the Agilist is usually a VP or a director, not usually higher than that. And the problem is that the incentives run well higher than that and down other chains. And I mean, this is a known problem in economics. It's a principal agent problem, right? What is good for the organization may well not be good for the person in the organization. How do you balance that? Agile was built to solve organization level problems, not built to solve the problems that directors and managers and VPs in the organization have. And I think we're having huge problems with that.
But don't the principles still extend? That's my question, right? Like the how we go about doing it and the approaches that we should take most likely are similar, if not the same.
I think a lot of this brings up for me our models and values as an Agile coach. And in the recent book, Wild West to Agile by Jim Highsmith, what keeps coming up is this courageous courage that comes up. If we're not willing to challenge that, and this comes down to what I think we're skirting around here is our agreement in our contract about what we're actually there to do. What is my job as an Agile coach? And although it might be hard, particularly in this climate we're in now, is to be clear about what that is and be willing to not take it on if it's not fitting with our morals and values.
Well, and to recognize that there's a lot of people who are not in a financial place. They are in the, I need a job. I care more about feeding my children. Right? And so there's a lot of people with Agile coach titles who are doing whatever the organization asks them to do, whether or not it is anywhere near something you could find any single sentence of the manifesto.
I'm gonna build on this, and I'm gonna say something that's gonna piss a lot of people off. Yes, Kyle, and there are an awful lot of seasoned Agile coaches who are trying to keep their agency alive, or they're trying to get that next big logo, and they have been taking significant amounts of money for not producing value, and they've been justifying it to themselves by saying, oh, I'm planting seeds, right? Or I'm improving the world for a few people. And that's not ethical. And I really want us to have this conversation more openly. Yes, there are problematic coaches in the mix who probably shouldn't be coaching because they have insufficient experience or the wrong perspective. But the top names in the industry have been doing this for a long time. And so there's this kind of unethical underbelly to what we've done. And I think we should own it.
Absolutely. I think that gets now take that and then multiply it by an Accenture, a Deloitte, et cetera, et cetera. You're my people, Erika. I like it.
There is a divergence. There are, I'm going to use my words because I like to prop up some groups. There's the philosophers, the people who say, what is Agile? What should it be? What can it be? People who write manifestos, things like that. And there's a marketing group saying businesses will pay money if you help them with whatever the heck they say they want. Those aren't the same groups, and we all use the same word, agile.
Yes.
I want to point something else out too, because there was this conversation a bit ago about fast. Agile's not about being fast. I call BS on that, because if we look at the technical practices that are supposed to underpin Agile, okay, fast may not be in the manifesto, but it is implied in every step.
So
Because it's about pulling people into smaller groups so they're working more effectively. It's about getting working software out the door and getting feedback on it fast so that you can adjust fast. It's about simplifying things so that you can work more quickly.
Yeah.
It's about creating code bases that are more easily maintainable and extensible. It's about all of those things. And we kind of threw the technical practices out with the bathwater a long time ago. And I'm not a technical coach, right?
Erika, define fast. What's fast?
Well, right. It's an abstraction.
Yeah.
Fair question.
So by nature, we think fast is better, right? Just by nature.
I don't. So I'm not going to take that label. But yeah.
Most enterprises are so focused on output, which is you're measuring throughput, which is speed essentially, right? How much can you get done in this short amount of time?
But you can't take that conversation and separate it from quality. Those two things need to go hand in hand.
Well, not even that. So the focus. So let me real quick. So the focus, when I say Agile is not about fast, it's not me saying it. Agile says that. Again, go to the Agile Manifesto and point out where they say the word fast anywhere in there. And you think those words were just, whimsically created early and often. If you think that was some whimsical invention, then that's a whole other conversation for another day. But
I do not think it was a whimsical conversation. Right. I do think it was based in heavily technically skilled people bringing their lightweight soft development methods to the table. There's another word that's not used in the manifesto, and that's psychology. But I think that it's throughout the manifesto that it's about how do we wrangle the psychology of groups in a way that is effective for business.
Actually, it is there. It's in individuals' interactions. That's the psychology portion of it. That's right in there. That's one of the first ones, right? That's one of the first core values. So that's in there. The word that the Agile Manifesto uses to govern what the speed should be, it's not focused on speed. It's focused on sustainability.
Well, it also says frequently, right?
But that's not speed. That's not the same. Again, Kyle, you know what I'm getting at.
I do. I think you're both calling out points and in very important ways. One of the problems we have is the way Agile gets sold a lot, and I have heard CTOs in boardrooms wave things around saying twice the work in half the time. Or I've heard Sutherland go off on, I've seen 500% improved productivity in terms of features per week from high quality XP teams that use Scrum. Right.
And what we're missing is any conversation around actual value that's been validated through some type of feedback loop with the customers, right? Whether that's NPS, whether that's whatever other metric you can use for that. There's plenty out there. I think that product led is catching on because Agile is falling asleep at the wheel around that. That's what I'm trying to say.
But I keep hearing leaders buy Agile for speed, whether or not Agile is about speed.
Right, and that's a problem. That's the whole point. That's the whole point of me bringing that up, is that people have these perceptions about Agile that aren't fair because they're not true.
Yeah, so I'm in the fast is implied camp. I'll be real upfront about that, and this is why. So we don't have a crystal ball. I don't have a crystal ball. I'm going to assume you don't have a crystal ball either. The only way to ensure value to our customers and to the people that it matters to, whoever those people are to you, is to inspect and adapt. And that is the heart and soul of Agile. The only way to quickly do that is to do that iteratively and wait for it fast. Now, this gets into experimentation. This gets into the psychology of it's okay to, learn quickly instead of fail quickly. You know what I mean? That's the whole essence of Agile. You're not going to get it perfect every time. And like we hit the outcome every single time. I'm all with you, Chris, that at the end of the day, it's all about maximizing the value to the customers. But the way to do that is to quickly or fastly iterate.
Let's talk about what Agile actually, the manifesto actually says, please. Word fast.
I would rather not.
Yeah.
No, but it's
Word
no, but I do
Word
want
fast
to
is not
say
in there. What's in there?
You guys can talk about
What's in there is sustainability. What's in there is sustainability, and the ability to keep that going into the future without stopping. That's the speed. What governs speed is the level of sustainability available. That it's very clear. It's like we have an answer here. It's very explicit on what the answer is and what the guidance was, what the indications were. So it's not like we're pulling this out of the air.
No,
yeah,
but
no one's saying that. We all I trust that everyone on this call can read the manifesto and interpret it and understand what it's saying. What I'm saying is my personal preference is to not abide by something that was made 20-something years ago and strictly follow it. Let's be agile in ourselves here with this and be real meta with it and really think about, get out of the semantics and get out and live agile instead of using the manifesto as a blanket.
What defines Agile then? If the Agile manifesto does not define the Agile movement, then what defines Agile?
It's a great question.
So
let me suggest, I'm largely in agreement. I know I've been hearing Dan. I wanted to respond to Georgina on the comments too, but let me stick with the conversation for a minute. A friend of mine, also named Kyle, just like there's too many Ryans around, there's too many Kyles around, Kyle Rowland, who is now living down in Austin. Kyle says, look, you want what's in the Agile manifesto? There's one path, and it's what Tess just said. You go faster, and if you go faster, then what you're doing is you're allowing us to inspect and adapt. And if you go slower, very simply, you cannot inspect and adapt. That entire theory is built on the foundation of we deliver small chunks of software fast.
I've never seen a company whose focus was not going fast. I've seen plenty of companies, maybe 90%, whose focus was not on doing things that are truly sustainable. So if we're talking about impact, maybe we want to go back again to the roots and focus on what sustainability truly meant to them and what it means to us today. I'm good with, perfectly fine with contextualizing it and moving that to today's date, right? Like I'm not saying we live in the past, but we need to understand what it meant to solve, what problems were meant to be solved then, so that we can contextualize it. That's kind of why I'm framing it this way. I don't mean to throw back to the manifesto that we have to.
I want to ask a question here because we are re-arguing the same point.
We are,
and I'm not sure that serves either our listeners.
I'll let you guys talk then. I really appreciate the conversation. It's been great. I wish you the best of luck. Have a good one.
Okay.
And thus goes love mobility.
There. Yeah.
Well, so if Kyle, if you go in, I really want to make sure Dan and some of the other folks
I was trying to go that way.
Too.
I was trying to pursue Dan's thing, but he's trying to run off too. Dan's line: one goes slowly, one's adapting and inspecting continuously. The famous military line, slow is smooth and smooth is fast, right? That's the general theory. You can and should consider not rushing, right? I think the fast opposition is a lot of times fast comes from rushing and being willing to give up quality in order to gain speed, which we all know happens a lot in IT.
I want to propose a slightly different perspective, Kyle. I think that the fast conversation happens at the project management level. And when you ask it at that level, instead of asking it at the technical foundations level, you're living in a completely different world. Does that make sense? It's about where you're asking the question. Is a project going to be done quickly, or are we going to create an infrastructure that allows us to move smoothly, if we want to use that word? I'm not making sense. It's not landing. Everybody's like, what the hell is she talking about? Okay.
It took me a minute. I think I am parsing your thing. Like when I run into a CIO, a CTO having the speed conversation, it's a different conversation than when I'm talking to the infrastructure engineers about
Yes.
what quickly means.
Yes. Thank you for explaining it for me.
I was, similar to you, Kyle, I was interested in Georgina's comment, which I wrote down as agility is only for the small. I was curious because you also wanted to come back to it, what it was for you that you found interesting.
So I'm going to say it again. Agility, if you have a company where the CEO, the guy leading the company, his pocketbook is impacted by how well the product lands, agility seems to align very well. My impression historically is that what I would call good agility also lands very well if your job is to make the output get good results. But my impression also is very few large companies have organized their systems in such a way that good results get rewarded. And so to some extent, Georgina is very accurate. Agile helps small organizations and everybody in the small organization. In a larger organization, Agile may help the organization and it may help the team, but the people in between the organization and the team do not seem to be getting a lot of value out of Agile. And so, whereas I think it's a really important thing to be discussed, I'm not sure that's correct. Agile doesn't help the director finish their project on time because Agile keeps saying, yeah, but if we do this, it's going to be worse for the users.
Yeah, so it depends how we define the word organization, because we have organizations within organizations. It's nested. So I sort of agree, and I don't. Hi, Georgina. I know Georgina. I don't actually know what she meant fully, but it did spark a few things for me because there's this old adage: nail it before you scale it. And I say it's actually the opposite. I say scale it and never nail it. From the perspective of, we always want to think as systemically as we can because value flows through multiple silos and departments and technical systems and whatnot. But then we can only act where we can act. And I think this comes back a little bit to the point earlier. I think, Erika, you were making something along these lines as well, is along the systemic line. So it's both and. I mean, and also to Jess's point about the 20%, I agree with Christopher that we can't really say. And sometimes it's been that I've been in situations where I've only sparked something in a handful of people, and that's the best I could do. Or there's been value in a whole value stream or a business unit within an organization that we could call something like a transformation, because we come back to them and they say, wow, there was something, that changed us. But we can't know that, and we can't always be ultimately responsible for that. And I don't think that it's fair to make us responsible. We need feedback, and we need continuous feedback for what we're doing. And if we're not providing value, then we shouldn't be there. But it's so much wider and more complex than that, that sometimes the best we do is something very small, and sometimes the best we do is something bigger and wider.
I think it's interesting, Ryan, that you brought lean into the conversation, talking about value streams. And that's a really common pattern when we're talking about Agile at scale, is we bring lean into the mix because it helps us manage the complexity. I don't have any real support for this other than experience, but my sense is that the Agile, the manifesto Agile that we love and hold dear, is limited by the human scale. It's limited by our cognitive abilities, because what we want when we're doing that is we want to hold code ownership, to use an XP term. I mean, I just, that was such a big part of the impetus for those lightweight software developments, is this idea that everybody has context. And so we talk about Dunbar's number, we talk about that being tribal, and you can know everybody's names. I think it's actually about people being able to hold some sense of how the system works, both the technical system and the human system, in their mind at any given time. Maybe you get 3 people together who have their different perspectives on the system, and they can talk about it and solve problems together. But there is a very real cognitive limit, and who knows what AI is going to do with this. I'm not hopeful, but I think there's a very real cognitive limit for humans and a social limit for humans. And when we start scaling up, we lose that. And so I think it's why organizations that organize by products, use the product model, by definition create tighter focus for the people working on that product. I think that's why we see more success there. I wonder about human psychology, social psychology, the ability to hold context in mind at those larger scales. I have yet to see it really well done. Have any of you?
It appears that founders' rule can maintain. Like, I have seen good, purposeful alignment across an organization, or at least I have seen what looks like good, purposeful alignment across an organization when a founder is still running the thing, even if it grows.
But I'm not talking about alignment. I'm talking about the ability of any given developer to have a sense of where their work fits in the system, both the technical system, the human system, and the business system. That's 3, not both, but you know what I mean. Like, to have all that context. That's at least been my focus in coaching, is if you want empowered teams, they need to have awareness.
Yeah, 5 years ago, I abandoned any other form of coaching except for dojo coaching, and it is all about coaching for learning. It's the only way I will coach, and I like what you're saying, Erika, because it truly does focus on building that context and that hands-on connectedness to what matters to the team, to the person. Because I also struggle with, I don't know, at least coaching it any other way.
I think there's a big difference between one-to-one coaching and team coaching, and that team coaching can certainly include one-to-one coaching. But I think as Agile coaches, there needs to be some team coaching, and then there's also the question of what's the difference between coaching and facilitation, which we can get into semantics, but ultimately it's how do I help to this team and teams of teams to work better together for value. And there was mention of the word psychology, and there is certainly a need to understand psychology of teams and individuals to do that. But I agree, and I know this came up in previous calls about that distinction, where sure, there might be value in one-to-one coaching with individuals on that team, but what is the scope of that? And regardless of what the scope of it, it still might be of value to the team. But it comes back to what's my role here? What's the agreement here? Some of that value people can get from outside of an Agile coach by going to their own coach or therapist or whatever it might be.
Or their own manager.
Or manager, exactly, or groups outside or inside of work. I think primarily we are, there was mention of the word process earlier. I don't think we can get away from that. It comes by other names, flow, but that's primarily what I see we are there to do, which may have other adjuncts to it, for that aim.
Yeah, I thank you for that. So yes, and Erika kind of got me reeling on this human condition here a bit. At the end of the day, and this is why I think I'm connected. No, it's a good thing. I think this is why I'm connected so much for coaching for learning and more the learning aspect than the consulting aspect and the coaching aspect in terms of, coaching agility. Because when it comes down to, and I know we've heard it a million times, Agile is a mindset. But you have to have that confidence and that belief in oneself, the belief in one's team and one's company. And that's where that context comes in, and the skills to deliver X product. I don't know, when I heard that human condition, that's kind of what came to mind for me. And when you use the word context a few times, I was like, aha, that's what brews that context. That empowers, that gets us on the right track for, hey, I'm going to build these skills. I'm going to innovate and deliver and help grow the company. It's like, like you say, force multiplier. I think that's a perfect example of it.
We're just basking in your brilliance, Jess.
1 hour, 12 minutes. Is it over?
Is it over? Is that what you asked? Sorry.
Yes, I'm sorry. Is it over?
Oh, that's better.
I always like closing statements. Hey, what did this make in what was the interesting? What did it become interesting for you? Where was the interest or value or something?
You're asking each of us?
I am.
Kyle, you could answer that for yourself first if you like. But I would, as part of the closing circle, we'll go Kyle, and as if we were sitting in a circle. Kyle, Jess, Erika, Ryan, and I'll take the head out.
So that honestly, getting to talk to the people I didn't know, right? I know Erika. I love Erika. I get to talk to Erika all the time. I know Ryan, the host. I get to talk to him often enough too. I was really happy to get to listen to smart people think about Agile together. Like that's what it was for me, right? I have seen Jess's name several times, and I've seen Ryan's name a few times also. And I have some talk with Christopher also. And just getting to talk and listen to the different ways people are thinking, because I know I've got my blinders on, and hearing the not Kyle blindered thing is always good for me. And so thank you.
Thank you, Kyle.
That was good.
You know what? Ditto all the way. I very much I appreciate the space to sit down and think and have you know, an open conversation that certainly helped broaden my horizons. And it's nice to learn from other people and kind of, like you said, take the blinders off. I think it could have affirmed some things, but it also opened my mind to even more curiosity. So I just want to thank you all for your energy and engagement.
Thank you, Jess. Erika?
I feel a lot of obligation to say a whole bunch of positive stuff. So let's assume I say all the positive things and appreciations. And I mean, I join these conversations because I learn from them and I get a chance to talk about how my weird brain works. I think the big takeaway for me, I thought that stuff about what the manifesto means and implies was fascinating. We spend, as Agilists writ large, we spend an awful lot of time arguing about truths. And there are holy wars that happen. And those have been frustrating enough for me over the years that I have actually put a lot of effort into digging into the why. And making sure that I'm understanding the why and asking people what was intended when you wrote the manifesto, right? Like, blah, blah, blah. So I hope that we can all ask that question more and more often, and notice when we are in the middle of something that feels like a holy war rather than a curious exploration.
Thank you, Erika. Ryan?
I'm curious why Christopher dropped out. And similar to Erika, I found that conversation on speed and so on valuable. It hasn't come up for me for a while, and it's so intrinsic to all of this. It goes so wide and deep. I did a dialogue fairly recently about the state or the future of Agile, and what came up as kind of a statement at the end of it, or a kind of accumulation, if you want to call it that, was slowing down to speed up. And I think this, for me anyway, this group has been a testament to that, because it's given me the opportunity to slow down, to listen, to reflect, to learn. And I just wish there was more of it, both in this kind of format and in the organizations themselves, because it's so rich, and I learned so much. So thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
You're the host, Ryan. You get to play too.
Well, I was doing a lot of time, again, just sensing, appreciating each of you. And again, I'm in appreciation for you for coming here, for sharing what had heart and meaning for you, each of you. And I hope to be able to do that and maybe participate at some point in the future if I can get a producer to help me, world, come out. And so, yeah, go ahead and put some music on, close the space, and I hope to see you all again in whatever configuration it happens to happen. So here, love in the term of challenge and acceptance, as I like to say. Was there understanding? I think so. What do you think? I'll let that ruminate with you. Thank you for the precious gift of your time and attention. we'll open some space next week.
Thank you, Ryan.